everyone, and thank you for joining our Matchmaker session today. My name is Juliana Weber, and I'm the project coordinator for CityLAB Hamilton. Matchmaker events are where we learn about projects that have been submitted by the staff members at the City of Hamilton, and we work with faculty members from Redeemer, Mohawk, and McMaster to find a good student, faculty, and staff partnership. Today, we are joined by Hector Quintero, Superintendent of Environmental Monitoring and Enforcement with Hamilton Water. Along with him today are his colleagues Martha Karaoke, Project Manager of Regulatory Monitoring, and Lisa Young, an environmental technologist. They will be discussing ideas around developing a framework to measure community trust and customer satisfaction in regards to environmental monitoring and enforcement. So thank you for joining us today, Hector. And if you could first tell us about your role at the city and how your work impacts Hamiltonians.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me here today to talk a little bit about our unit and this new challenge being posed to CityLAB. My name is Hector Quintero, and I've been in the city for 10 years, a lot of history, but mostly focused in Hamilton Water. Today, I find myself as the Superintendent of Environmental Monitoring and Enforcement, and it's a pretty exciting role. We get to support in the division in many different ways. We do have exposure on drinking water activities, wastewater activities, and our new surface water program recently supported by City Council. So my role, it's really to keep an eye on things out there with our team, to look at changes in trends in data. We're also responsible for the sewer use by law enforcement. So we look at users of a system, how does it impact us? Is there a negative impact? And working with the private sector to rectify any issues we may find. So it's a big variety, and I have today a presentation for all of you to walk you through about our scope of work, what is that we do, and an opportunity to ask questions as well as we learn from each other and we kind of pose our challenge to all of you as to what we're thinking here.
Wonderful. So if you want to go ahead and share, you can get started and guide us through the challenge, and hopefully we can get some background information and the objectives that you're hoping to achieve.
Okay, thank you. So as I explained earlier, I work with a team of 17 individuals under the Environmental Monitoring and Enforcement umbrella. We are part of Hamilton Water, and our unit is compliance and regulation. So we're in the business of ensuring compliance with all the laws that we must follow, as well as keeping an eye on our day-to-day operations. So just because we're in compliance doesn't mean that things are not starting to drift or there's changes. So we kind of play that role. Here's the people I work with. Again, very dedicated individuals, a lot of different backgrounds. In last few years, we have seen a lot of change in our operations, and we took the opportunity to look at ourselves and look at what we're here to do. And we came up with a revised kind of mandate mission on behalf of Hamilton Water. And we believe that we're here to ensure a healthy environment and elevate trust and confidence in Hamilton Water Services through innovative risk assessment, mitigation, and compliance program. We do aim to be the leading monitoring program for compliance and enforcement in our city. And we look to our community to ensure there is value in what we're doing, and there's the trust that we look after to ensure that everybody feels that we're protecting the water resources to the best possible way. So these two statements are critical because you'll see them reflecting on everything we do as we kind of walk through our business. We take them to heart, and part of the challenge that we face, a lot of our work is citizen facing, and a lot of our quantification of work is very technical in nature. So it's kind of creating or finding the right balance to be able to measure ourselves towards our community. So in terms of what we do, I prepared this slide to kind of walk the faculty members a little more in detail about the scope of our work. So on the water program, we have visibility on the corrosion control program. This is a new chemical that was added to the drinking water system to prevent lead from entering our drinking water and entering, affecting people. We look after regulatory sampling in the drinking water system, in particular the Woodward distribution system. So this involves, looking at different pressure districts, collecting samples every day to a set number per month as required per regulation to ensure we have visibility, to ensure things are working fine, and to bring attention to any deviations in water quality that could potentially impact public health or our day-to-day operations in Hamilton Water. And we're also in the business of data trending. So we're looking for changes in trends in the long term and again, drive those conversations. On the wastewater side, a little bit different. We enforce the sewer use bylaw. The sewer use bylaw, it's a regulatory tool that allows us to set expectations on how people will use our sewer. We also enforce the wastewater abatement bylaw, and we'll talk a little bit about through this presentation as to what that is. We do spill response, both the surface waters and our sewer system. We're responsible for wastewater treatment regulatory sampling. So we do collect in collaboration with our plant operations team, influent samples into the plant, effluent samples going into the environment from our wastewater treatment infrastructure. Combined sewer overflow sampling as well. There are some requirements and our team will deal with it. Data trending, and something new this year is COVID-19 surveillance monitoring in our sewer network. Moving on to the surface water program. Again, this is something new, new addition, but again, with great potential in the long term to protect our watersheds. But we do have a new surface water monitoring program. And this program aimed to establish a monitoring network within our city to start collecting data on a set frequency and to start understanding the state of our water courses. So it involves collecting information, working with public health and other third-party agencies, as well as integrate the Wind Spills program and our infrastructure kind of management day to day. So it's a broad portfolio. And again, this is kind of our challenge. We're very technical in knowledge internally in EME. We know what we got to do. And our biggest challenge now is how do we relate to the public? How do we ensure that the community feels that this program is very valuable for them, aside from just our quantification? And we're pretty good at quantification. I think over the last decade, we've been evolving in the way we measure our operations, we quantify our work, and we look for continuous improvement, activity. So this is a summary of our 2021 program, and we look at, we operate a one main water treatment plant and 4 well systems, supported by a large array of assets, supported by over 300 employees in Hamilton Water. So it's quite a large system. But in EME's side, we're in the business of sampling. So we are reporting a lot on the number of samples that are coming in, what types of samples, whether they're corrosion control, whether they're distributions, any kind of customer inquiries that come our way, and ultimately measuring ourselves against regulatory compliance. So we do have to collect a set number by law, and that's the ultimate driver. But again, is that tell the full story, right? Is that the value we're looking for? Moving on to the wastewater program, similar scenario. We kind of learn a little bit of the broad services and the scope of them. And we're pretty good at quantifying. We have a lot of permits. We work with a lot of industry. We are originating revenue. And we know our city is growing and we continue to inspect and find new locations. But again, is this representative of value to the community? And that's kind of our main question out there. Surface waters and spills programming, similar scenario, again, different scope. But we're pretty good at knowing what's happening out there. From a customer perspective, and this is kind of what we want to make our dividing line, we do work with a lot of internal staff and Hamilton Water sections. And then we have a lot of external interactions. So we do a lot of work with residents, education, small children as well through our Children Water Festival. We educate a lot of ICI businesses on bylaws. Sometimes we have to enforce the law and we have to have the opposite side of the discussion. Sewage haulers, the Ministry of the Environment, conservation authorities, environmental organizations, and other sewer use bylaws in the province, which we tend to look after to ensure that there is consistency out there. The focus of the project, again, we're looking more at the external kind of the lens. Internally, I mean, discussion with the leadership, I think the focus is on the community, that trust and confidence and looking out instead of looking in. So what is the sewer use bylaw? And this is critical legislation for Hamilton Water. So it really enables us to monitor what comes in our sewers, what's happening, put some limitations on the type of pollutants that we can handle, prohibit substances that we don't want or are dangerous, allow us to issue permits, allow us to investigate spills, and allow us to enforce the law should a violation be found or improper behavior be taking place. So it's quite the regulation. And again, our approach is mostly education to make sure that individuals understand the expectations and why things are taking place. But we're always ready to have the other conversations where we have to, look at the enforcement to ensure positive change. General information on our bylaw enforcement process, which is directly kind of impacts how we run our day-to-day. We're looking at risk assessment, understanding violations, and again, taking action if needed. We do have a role in the citywide spills programming as part of our day-to-day portfolio, and this is a 24/7 service. We're really there to investigate, notified, make sure any immediate action can be taken, and work with the regulatory agencies and the responsible parties to ensure the areas are cleaned up. Very unique a scenario in the service because typically it's not our spill. We come in after the fact to look for assistance. And this is on a program that you'll find, a lot of exposure with the IC&I sectors, sometimes through accidents, sometimes, one-offs that do occur. So Hamilton is an industrial city, and we see this program, very active. And last but not least, our wastewater abatement program, another service offered by the unit. And this is about giving money back whenever you're diverting water from our sewer system. Again, it's a program that's executed on the side through our inspection programming, but again, one that the public sector could benefit, and we're educating as well as ensuring that the applicants that are making it do make the qualifications to ensure that we're managing city money appropriately. So in a nutshell, that is what we do. And it's a broad scope, and I do work with a lot of wonderful people. But that's kind of our challenge. And really the question that has been posed to us in Hamilton Water is we got to look at now at confirming or ensuring that the public knows that we're doing a good job on their behalf. And talking about the technical items is one piece. And the challenge that we have today is, is there an alternative to measuring ourselves for success? Is there a better way that the community is looking at this in a different angle that we just don't know? And that's where we need the help in a different perspective. And we're looking at the students and the educational institutions as a potential avenue to give us a different angle. You see it from the other end. You're educating the new generations on sustainability and the need to look beyond the status quo, right? And that's what we're interested to know is what is that lens, and is what we're doing in line to the future expectations. So anyways, that's what I had for you today.
Well, thank you for sharing that presentation. That really gave a really solid background on your department and what you're executing from day to day. And I'm curious, what are the current measurements that you have in place to measure this customer satisfaction, community trust that you're looking to capture? Are there any current measurements in place that would be helpful for students to know about?
So the current measurements in place are regulatory drivers. So standards set by the Ministry of the Environment based on the size of our systems. Okay. And currently those are the main avenues to report back to the community that we're meeting the expectation. Okay. The other parameters are more metrics and internal performance that we set ourselves. So for example, in the spills programming, we do have a 1-hour response to site, and we expect our staff to be there at least 80% of the time. Time is critical in these events, and again, it's an internal performance. But aside going out into the community, our regulatory requirements are probably the main item. Okay.
Are there other departments, possibly in public works, that have maybe a similar framework for collecting this kind of data from the public that can be studied or used by students? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Or any other? Are there any other municipalities that you know that are measuring this community trust out in the community?
No, we raised this question with our MISAC counterparts, our municipal sewer use bylaw Ontario counterparts, and it's new, right? Everybody is in process of quantifying the other end, and in Hamilton, we're looking at the next step, right? Okay. So that's kind of where we find ourselves, but I'm not aware of any other example that could be relatable.
All right, uncharted territory. That's good. That's what we like to hear. So what do you? If we could kind of think about specifically what student deliverables would look like, are you envisioning them putting together a survey for community, creating a framework for expectations for how to collect a survey? What level of framework are you looking from a student perspective?
Well, originally envisioned a team that will come in and look at what we do first without any measurement, trying to understand what is it that EME does. And from that perspective, what is it that's important to you, looking from that angle, right? You don't know, you're not in depth, but once we understand, or at least have an idea of what's important, then we start kind of looking or asking ourselves, if this is important, how can we measure? Or how can we set tools in place that we can measure ourselves and set a baseline? Because we're strong believers that the only way to improve is you have to set a baseline and judge yourself against it. And that's the challenge, is what's the best way and for what should we be looking and should we be measuring ourselves to ensure that we're capturing this other side of our story. But again, I think it's coming in, not knowing, learning, asking questions, and I'm proposing, a view on how would you measure a successful operation from the public side, right?
Okay.
Or if you're a student and you're very interested on sustainability, what does sustainability means when you're looking at our processes and you're trying to showcase, are we making progress to where we want to go? And again, it's a tough challenge because there's so many moving parts and so many priorities. And we know sustainability and climate change are at the forefront of our discussion, but it's pretty hard to quantify at a larger scope that we all find relatable to, right?
Can you give us a bit of background on where this idea is coming from? Is this something that has been introduced across the city, or is this something organic that your department has just decided would be the next step?
So in public works, continuous improvement is embedded in our culture, and it really began scoped at internal metrics. And as we're getting a lot more evolved and experience with those, we're at a stage that we need to look at a customer metrics. So customer service, customer satisfaction, it's the next step in the evolution of this model. And that's where we stand right now. We have a lot of services that are out in the public, they're out with companies, and we're just there. We need to look at that option on what's the next step to quantify it. But again, it's an ongoing evolution of the program, and we're at the stage that now we're looking at our customer, right? Because the customer drives everything we do in Hamilton Water.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, and I'm looking forward to the discussion with the faculty.
No, thank you, Juliana. Appreciate the time today.